You've probably heard of them, maybe as God's Marines, or the Company, or even the Schoolmasters of Europe, but their official name, the Society of Jesus. Today, we're going to unpack the story of the Jesuits, a religious order that was founded on this almost military-like principle of spiritual discipline and, believe me, a truly global ambition.
You know, to really get the Jesuits, you got to start with their symbols. Just look at this. They're a Christogram. Those letters you see, IHS, they're the first three letters of Jesus' name in Greek. It's this powerful, direct emblem for an order that really saw itself as a special force, a company serving directly under the banner of Christ.
And this idea of being soldiers, it wasn't just some cool branding. No way. This line right here is from their founding charter, the formula of the Institute, to serve as a soldier of God. I mean, that's not a metaphor. That's a mission statement. It's the very reason they got the nickname God's soldiers. They were built for action, ready to be deployed literally anywhere in the world at a moment's notice.
So you have to ask, where did this intense military-style mindset come from? Well, it all goes back to one guy. To really understand the Jesuits, you have to understand their founder, Ignatius of Loyola, a man whose life was forged first on the battlefield and then in faith.
Okay, so here's the quick and dirty story. Back in 1521, Ignatius was this Basque nobleman, a soldier, totally driven by glory and ambition. But then, boom, a cannonball shatters his leg. And during this long, agonizing recovery, he has this profound spiritual awakening. He literally trades his sword and armor for a life of poverty and prayer, channeling all that military discipline and strategic thinking toward a spiritual goal. Fast forward to 1540, and he and 6 of his buddies from the University of Paris have created a whole new kind of religious order.
In this moment right here, this is when it all becomes official. On September 27, 1540, Pope Paul III gives his formal seal of approval. The Society of Jesus was born. And let me tell you, this wasn't just another group of monks. This was a highly organized, centralized, and mobile force, ready to tackle the biggest challenges of the 16th century world.
You know, their original name in Spanish really says it all, Compañía de Jesús. Now, that word compañía, or company, was a very deliberate choice. On one hand, it had these clear military vibes, like a company of soldiers. But it also meant a group of companions, as in the companions of Jesus. It's this dual meaning, this blend of military discipline and spiritual friendship, that's really the DNA of the whole Jesuit order.
So, with the Pope's blessing, this small company just explodes onto the world stage. I mean, their mission was global from day one, and they went after it with this incredible three-pronged strategy that would change the world through education, science, and exploration.
So their work really focused on 3 key fronts. First up, education. They set out to build a world-class network of schools. Then there were the global missions, heading out to Asia, Africa, and the Americas to spread their message. And third, the Counter-Reformation. Their job was to strengthen the Catholic Church back in Europe against the rise of Protestantism.
And honestly, education was their superpower. Get this, by the time Ignatius died in 1556, the Jesuits were already running 74 colleges across 3 continents. Insane, right? Their secret weapon was the standardized curriculum called the Ratio Studiorum, which you can see here. It created this rigorous, humanistic system, one of the first of its kind really, and it would go on to train generations of leaders, thinkers, and scientists.
And their missionaries? They went everywhere. On the left, you've got Matteo Ricci, who brought Western astronomy and math to the imperial court of China. And on the right, that's José de Anchieta. This guy didn't just minister to indigenous peoples in Brazil. He co-founded cities that are still major hubs today, like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Just incredible.
And these guys weren't just preachers. They were scholars, scientists, and linguists. They were often the first to document local languages, creating dictionaries for everything from Japanese to the Tupi language in South America. This made them this crucial bridge for knowledge, right? They were introducing European science to the East and at the same time bringing Eastern philosophy, like the works of Confucius, back to the West.
But as you can imagine, all this incredible success, this wealth, this influence, it came at a price. Their power made them a target, and the very qualities that made them so effective also made them feared, which led to a dramatic and, well, a pretty violent backlash.
Which brings us to a huge question in their history. How on earth did an order dedicated to serving the Pope become so controversial that powerful kings demanded their destruction and the Pope actually agreed? What went wrong?
Well, it really boiled down to four main conflicts. First, in South America, they protected indigenous peoples from slavery in these unique, self-governing towns called reductions. This, of course, infuriated the colonial powers who wanted that free labor. Second, their schools and land holdings made them incredibly wealthy, leading to accusations of economic dominance. Third, as personal confessors to kings, they had immense political power behind the throne. And finally, their ultimate loyalty was always to the Pope in Rome, which made monarchs super suspicious that they were basically a foreign power operating inside their own kingdoms.
So you see the problem, right? It was a total double-edged sword. Their greatest strengths became their biggest liabilities. The very things we might praise them for today, like defending native populations and building amazing schools, were seen as massive threats to the established order. They were just seen as too powerful, too wealthy, and way too independent.
And it all came crashing down in 1773. Under enormous political pressure from the kings of France, Spain, and Portugal, Pope Clement XIV did the unthinkable. He signed a decree that completely dissolved the Society of Jesus. Just gone. Their schools were shut down, their property was seized, and the Jesuits, officially, were no more.
Now, for pretty much any other organization, that would be the end of the story. Game over. But with the Jesuits, their suppression was really just one dramatic chapter in a much, much longer saga. Their influence was just too deep to simply vanish.
Because you guessed it, the story doesn't end there. Not even close. Just 41 years later, in 1814, with the political map of Europe totally redrawn by the Napoleonic Wars, the Pope officially restored the Society of Jesus. God's soldiers were back in business.
And believe me, they are far from a historical relic. Today, you've got nearly 14,000 Jesuits working in 112 countries around the globe. And their most visible legacy? It's still education. You'll find Jesuit colleges and universities in over 100 nations, still carrying on that centuries-old mission.
And in the end, their whole story kind of comes back to this one simple but really powerful motto, Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, or for the greater glory of God. This idea that any work, whether it's teaching astronomy, compiling a dictionary, or advising a king, can be a sacred act if you do it for the right reason. That's the engine that has driven the Society of Jesus for nearly 500 years.
Which kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Their history is this complex mix of incredible scholarship, deep faith, immense power, and a ton of controversy. So what is their true legacy? Are they educators, selfless missionaries, or were they just really savvy political players? The answer, much like the Jesuits themselves, is probably a little bit of all three.